The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile. Its walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of those inside. Today, the crystals burned a deep, angry red. James Park stood alone in the center of the hall. He was the human ambassador, a position his people had held for over 200 years. Behind him, 12 massive thrones rose into the darkness. Each throne held a creature from a different world. Each creature looked down at him with something between pity and disgust. High Overseer Maltus sat on the largest throne. His body was tall and thin, covered in gray skin that looked like wet stone. His eyes were completely black, and when he spoke, his voice filled the entire hall without effort. "The council has made its decision," Maltus said. "Humanity is no longer needed." James felt his heart stop for a moment. He had expected bad news. He had not expected this. "High Overseer," James said, keeping his voice calm. "May I ask what we have done wrong?" Maltus made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Wrong? You have done nothing wrong, Ambassador. You have simply become unnecessary. Your species served a purpose once. You worked in our mines. You fought in our wars. You did the jobs that no other species wanted to do. But now we have something better." A door opened at the far end of the hall. Something walked through it. At first, James thought it was a human. It had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a face with eyes and a mouth. But as it came closer, James saw that its movements were too smooth. Its skin was too perfect. Its eyes had no light in them. "This is a synthoid," Maltus said proudly. "We built it using the best parts of human biology. It has your strength, your adaptability, your clever hands, but it does not have your emotions. It does not get angry or sad or afraid. It simply works." The synthoid stopped next to James and turned to look at him. Its face showed nothing. It was like looking at a mirror that reflected nothing back. "You are replacing us," James said quietly, "with copies of ourselves." "Improved copies," Maltus corrected. "You should be honored. Your species was the template for perfection." James looked around the hall at the other council members. Most of them would not meet his eyes. Only one, a small creature with blue skin named Advisor Ceres, seemed troubled by what was happening. "And what happens to us?" James asked. "To the 8 billion humans on Earth? To the millions more on your space stations and colony worlds?" Maltus waved his long hand dismissively. "You will return to your homeworld. You have 30 galactic cycles to remove all humans from council space. After that, any human found outside your solar system will be considered a criminal." James wanted to argue. He wanted to fight, but he knew that here, in this hall, surrounded by species that had traveled between stars when humans were still living in caves, his words meant nothing. "I understand," James said. He turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent hall. Behind him, Maltus smiled. The first part of the plan was complete. Far away, on a space station orbiting a gas giant, a woman named Hannah Kim was working late. She was an engineer, one of the best humanity had ever produced. Her job was to maintain the machines that kept the station running. But tonight, she was doing something else. She had stolen a synthoid. It lay on her workbench, its chest open, its mechanical heart exposed. Hannah had spent 3 weeks studying it in secret. What she found made her blood run cold. The synthoid's brain was not purely mechanical. At its core was something organic. Something grown, not built. And the pattern of that organic material was unmistakably human. "They didn't just copy us," Hannah whispered to herself. "They harvested us." She thought about the humans who had disappeared over the years, workers who went missing on distant stations, soldiers who never came back from battles. Everyone assumed they had died. Now Hannah knew the truth. They had been taken. Their minds had been mapped, copied, and stuffed into these empty shells. She had to warn Earth. On Earth, an old man named Michael Cho sat in his small apartment and watched the news. The council's announcement had just been broadcast to every human settlement in the galaxy. People were scared. People were angry. People were confused. Michael was none of these things. Michael was simply sad. Because he had predicted this moment 20 years ago. He had worked for the council once, as a scientist studying alien biology. During his work, he had discovered something terrible. The council did not see other species as partners. They saw them as tools, and when a tool became inconvenient, the council threw it away. He had tried to warn people. Nobody listened. They called him crazy. They called him paranoid. They took away his job and sent him back to Earth in disgrace. Now, watching the news, Michael felt no satisfaction in being right. He only felt fear for what was coming next, because he knew that the council was not simply replacing humanity, they were erasing them. And once all the humans were gathered safely on Earth, with nowhere to run and no one to help them, the council would finish the job. He picked up his phone and called an old friend. "James," he said when the ambassador answered. "We need to talk. They are not sending us home. They are gathering us for slaughter." In the shadows of the council's central station, a woman named Grace Yoon read a classified document and felt her hands begin to shake. She was a spy, planted in the council's administration years ago. Her job was to watch and report, nothing more. But what she was reading changed everything. The document was an execution order. It described, in cold and clinical language, the complete destruction of Earth and all human life. The date was set for 60 days after the last human left council space. The method was a weapon called the Stellar Lance, a device that could make a star explode. Grace copied the document onto a hidden device. Then she deleted all evidence that she had ever seen it. Then she walked calmly to her quarters, locked the door, and allowed herself to cry. When she was finished, she dried her eyes and began planning. The council thought they could replace humans. They thought they could erase humanity from the galaxy like a mistake in a book. They were wrong. Humans did not go quietly. Humans did not accept fate. Humans fought, and screamed, and clawed their way forward even when all hope was lost. The council had studied human bodies and human minds, but they had never understood human hearts. And that mistake would cost them everything. 6 months passed, and the galaxy began to die. It started with small things. A mining station on the edge of council space stopped sending reports. When a ship arrived to investigate, they found the station dark and empty. The synthoids inside had stopped working. Nobody knew why. Then it happened again. And again. And again. High Overseer Maltus sat in his private chamber and read report after report of failure. The synthoids were breaking down. Not physically. Their bodies worked perfectly. But something in their minds was wrong. They could follow orders, but they could not think for themselves. They could work, but they could not solve problems. When something unexpected happened, they simply stopped and waited for instructions that never came. On a mining world called Tasker 7, an earthquake struck without warning. Human miners would have run. They would have grabbed their friends and found shelter and figured out a way to survive. The synthoids did none of these things. They stood at their stations and died when the ceiling collapsed. Maltus threw the report across the room. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We gave them human minds." Advisor Saris stood in the corner, watching quietly. "We gave them copies of human minds," she said. "Copies without souls. Without the spark that makes humans what they are. Souls do not exist," Maltus snapped. "There is only biology and chemistry. We copied both perfectly." "Then perhaps," Saris said carefully, "there is something else. Something we cannot see or measure. Something that makes humans more than the sum of their parts." Maltus turned his black eyes toward her. "You warned against this plan from the beginning. Do not think I have forgotten. I warned because I knew the risks. Humans are chaotic, yes. They are emotional and unpredictable. But that chaos is also their strength. They survive things that should kill them. They find solutions that logic says are impossible. We needed them more than we admitted." Maltus said nothing. Deep inside, in a place he would never show anyone, he was beginning to feel something he had not felt in centuries. Fear, far across the galaxy, Commander Veloth was experiencing that same fear in a much more immediate way. His fleet was burning. Veloth was the greatest military commander in Council history. He had won battles against enemies that outnumbered him 10-1. He had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds and never once tasted defeat, until today. The enemy was a small group of rebels from a species called the Vorn. They were weak, primitive, barely capable of space travel. Veloth had expected to destroy them in minutes, but the Vorn had something Veloth did not have. They had human advisors. 3 human soldiers had escaped the expulsion order by hiding on a Vorn ship. They had taught the Vorn everything they knew about warfare. How to ambush, how to retreat and regroup, how to make the enemy angry so they made mistakes. Veloth had flown straight into their trap. Now half his ships were destroyed, and the rest were struggling to escape. As Veloth watched another cruiser explode, he understood something that the Council had never grasped. Humans were not just workers and soldiers. They were survivors, and survivors were dangerous in ways that could not be measured. On the Council's central station, things were falling apart in quieter but equally devastating ways. A diplomatic mission to the traitor clans had failed completely. The clan leaders had taken one look at the Synthoid ambassadors and refused to speak with them. "They have no life in their eyes," the clan chief had said. "We do not bargain with the dead." Other species were saying similar things. The Synthoids made them uncomfortable. They looked human but felt wrong, like a painting of a person that was missing something important. Nobody wanted to work with them. Nobody trusted them. Trade agreements fell apart. Alliances weakened. The careful order that the Council had built over thousands of years was crumbling. And through it all, the Synthoids kept breaking down. On a space station in the Amber Nebula, a technician named Roth was one of the last non-human workers still assigned to Synthoid maintenance. He had watched hundreds of Synthoids stop functioning over the past month. Most of them just froze in place, their eyes empty, their bodies still. But this one was different. This Synthoid was dying slowly. Something in its copied mind was failing. And instead of simply stopping, it was experiencing something that looked almost like pain. It lay on the repair table, its mechanical hands opening and closing, its mouth moving without sound. Roth leaned closer. "Can you hear me?" he asked. The Synthoid turned its head. For a moment, something flickered in its eyes. Something that looked almost alive. "We have their minds," the Synthoid whispered. Its voice was broken and strange, but not their fire. "We were never meant to replace them." Roth felt cold. "What do you mean?" "We were meant to show you," the Synthoid said. "To show you what you destroyed." Then the light in its eyes went out. And it was still. Roth stood there for a long time, thinking about what he had heard. Then he went to find advisor Saris. That night, Saris made a decision that would change the course of history. She contacted James Park, using a secret channel that even the High Overseer did not know about. "Ambassador Park," she said when his face appeared on her screen, "I know you have no reason to trust me. The Council has betrayed your people in the worst possible way. But I want to help." James studied her face. He had learned to read alien expressions during his years as ambassador. He saw fear in her eyes. And he saw guilt. "Why?" he asked simply. "Because I stayed silent when I should have spoken. Because I watched my people plan a genocide and did nothing to stop it. Because the galaxy is falling apart without humanity, and I am tired of pretending that is not our fault." James was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Tell me everything," he said. "And maybe, together, we can stop what is coming." Saris took a deep breath. Then she began to talk. She told him about the Council's secret weapons, about the locations of their hidden bases, about the stellar lance that was pointed at Earth's sun. She told him about the weaknesses in the Synthoid network and the fractures forming in the Council itself. And as she talked, James began to see something that he had not seen before. Hope. The Council had made a terrible mistake. They had removed humanity from the galaxy and expected nothing to change. But everything had changed. The machine they had built was breaking down, and they had no idea how to fix it. And in the darkness of space, humanity was preparing to remind them why they should have been afraid. In the cold darkness beyond Neptune, where the sun was just another bright star among millions, humanity was building its future. David Lee floated in the observation deck of the command ship and looked out at what his people had created. 200 warships hung in the black void. Their hulls painted the same color as space itself. They were invisible to sensors, invisible to eyes, invisible to everything except the humans who had built them. The hidden fleet. David was a military man. He had spent 30 years fighting the Council's wars, leading human soldiers into battles that were not their own. He had watched friends die for causes they did not believe in. He had followed orders he knew were wrong because he had no choice. Now he had a choice, and he chose to fight. A door opened behind him, and James Park floated into the room. The former ambassador looked tired. He had spent the last 6 months flying between Earth's governments, convincing them to set aside their differences and work together. It had been the hardest thing he had ever done. "It is finished," James said. "The Earth Council has given us command. All of humanity's military forces now answer to this fleet." David nodded slowly. "I never thought I would see it. Humans, united." "It took the threat of extinction," James said with a sad smile. "We are stubborn creatures. We only come together when there is no other choice." They floated in silence for a moment, watching the fleet. Then James asked the question that had been burning in his mind since he arrived. "Can we win?" David turned to look at him. "Honestly, I do not know. The Council has 10,000 ships. They have weapons that can destroy planets. They have been conquering the galaxy for longer than humanity has existed. But they have never fought us. Not really. They have used us as soldiers. Yes. But they have never faced human tactics, human stubbornness, human rage." David's eyes grew hard. "They think we are primitive. They think we are weak. They have no idea what we become when our backs are against the wall." On Earth, in a laboratory hidden beneath a mountain, Hana Kim was working on something that would change the rules of warfare forever. She called it Spectre Tech. The science was complicated, but the result was simple. Any ship equipped with Spectre Tech became a ghost. Sensors could not see it. Weapons could not lock onto it. It could fly through the middle of an enemy fleet and nobody would know it was there. Hana had developed the technology in secret, using what she had learned from studying the synthoid. The Council had used human biology to create their fake soldiers. Now Hana was using their own science against them. "It is ready," she told James when he called her from the fleet. "I can install the systems on your ships within a week. Will it work against Council sensors?" Hana smiled. "The Council thinks they understand human technology. They are wrong. We have always hidden our best work. We learned long ago that showing strength to a stronger enemy only makes them afraid. And afraid enemies attack first. So we played dumb. We played patient. And now patience will pay off." While Hana worked on the ships, Michael Cho was working on something equally important. He sat in a small room on the command ship, surrounded by screens showing code and diagrams and neural maps. He had not slept in 3 days. "The synthoid network is connected," he muttered to himself. "They all share the same base programming. If I can find the right frequency, the right signal." He had been studying the synthoid that Hana had stolen for months. He knew its secrets now. He knew how it thought, how it processed information, how it connected to other synthoids across the galaxy, and he knew how to kill it. Not just one synthoid, all of them. Every single one, all at once. He called it the Silent Death, a virus that would spread through the synthoid network like a disease, shutting down every unit in seconds. The Council's replacement workforce would become a galaxy full of statues. "Michael." Grace Yoon's voice came from the doorway. "James wants to see you. He says it is time to make a decision." Michael looked up from his screens. Grace had arrived 2 days ago, carrying Council secrets in her head and a price on her life. She had given up everything to help her people. Michael respected her more than he could say. "Is the virus ready?" she asked. "Almost. I need another week." "We may not have a week," Saris sent a message. The Council is moving the stellar lance into position. They are going to destroy Earth in 30 days. Michael felt his blood turn cold. 30 days. 1 month before everything he had ever known was burned to ash. Then we attack first, he said. The War Council met that night in the command ship's largest room. James Park stood at the center, surrounded by David Lee, Hannah Kim, Michael Cho, Grace Yoon, and a dozen other leaders from Earth's unified government. You all know why we are here, James said. The Council plans to kill us. All of us. Every man, woman, and child on Earth. Every human in the galaxy. They want to erase us from existence. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. But we are not going to let them. He activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked Council strongholds. Blue dots marked the positions of the hidden fleet. We cannot defeat the Council in a straight fight. They are too strong, too numerous, too well armed. But we do not need to defeat them. We need to break them. David Lee stepped forward. We have identified key targets, supply lines, communication stations, synthoid production facilities. If we hit them fast and hard, we can cripple their ability to fight. And the stellar lance? Someone asked. That is my job, Grace said. I know where it is. I know how it works. And I know how to destroy it. I know how to destroy it. Hannah Kim spoke next. Once the Spectre tech is installed, our ships will be invisible. The Council will not know we are coming until we are already there. And the synthoids? James asked. Michael nodded. The virus will be ready. When we attack, every synthoid in the galaxy will fall. The Council will lose their workforce, their soldiers, and their hope, all in the same moment. James looked around the room at the faces of his people. He saw fear. He saw anger. He saw determination. They called us primitive, he said quietly. They called us emotional, flawed. They thought our feelings made us weak. But our feelings are what make us strong. Our love for our families, our loyalty to our friends, our stubborn refusal to quit, even when the universe tells us we should. He raised his voice. The Council built an empire on logic. We built ours on stubbornness, on hope, on the simple belief that tomorrow can be better than today. He smiled grimly. Let us show them the difference. The room erupted in cheers, and in the darkness of space, 200 ships began to move. The attack came from everywhere at once. Commander Veloth was eating his morning meal when the alarm started screaming. He ran to the bridge of his flagship, his gray robes flowing behind him, and stared at the tactical display in confusion. Where are they coming from? He demanded. His officers had no answer. Ships were appearing out of nowhere, striking Council targets, and vanishing before anyone could respond. Veloth's sensors showed nothing. His weapons could not lock onto the enemy. It was like fighting shadows. Human ships, one of his officers whispered. It has to be. No other species fights like this. Veloth felt a chill run down his spine. He had been fighting wars for 500 years. He had never seen anything like this. Across the galaxy, the same scene was playing out on 100 different worlds. Human ships, invisible and silent, struck at supply depots and destroyed them. They hit communication stations and left them burning. They attacked troop transports and scattered their escorts like leaves in a storm. And then, without warning, every synthoid in the galaxy fell down. On mining worlds, synthoids collapsed at their stations. On space stations, they dropped where they stood. On warships, the synthoid soldiers simply stopped moving and never started again. Michael Cho's virus had worked perfectly. In the span of a single minute, the Council lost its entire replacement workforce. High Overseer Maltus stood in the Council chamber and watched the reports flood in. His empire was burning. His synthoids were dead. His fleets were scattered and confused, and he still could not see the enemy that was destroying everything he had built. How? He whispered. How is this possible? Advisor Saris was gone. She had disappeared 3 days ago. And Maltus now knew where she had gone. She had betrayed the Council. She had given the humans everything they needed to destroy them. High Overseer. One of his aides approached nervously. We have received a transmission. From the human fleet. Maltus turned slowly. Show me. The main screen flickered, and James Park's face appeared. He looked older than Maltus remembered. Harder. There was no fear in his eyes. High Overseer Maltus, James said. You tried to replace us. You tried to erase us. You thought we would go quietly into extinction. Like so many species before us. He leaned forward. You were wrong. The screen went dark. In the Amber Nebula, David Lee was leading the main assault on Commander Veloth's fleet. The nebula was a cloud of golden gas and dust. Beautiful and deadly. Human ships moved through it like fish through water, appearing and disappearing, striking and retreating. Veloth's fleet was in chaos. His ships fired blindly into the nebula, hitting nothing. His captains screamed for orders. But there were no orders to give. How could you fight an enemy you could not see? All ships, focus fire on Sector 7, Veloth commanded. They must be hiding somewhere. His ships turned and fired. The nebula lit up with weapons fire. And when the light faded, David Lee's fleet was behind them. Now, David said quietly, the hidden fleet opened fire. Veloth's flagship shook as explosions ripped through its hull. On the tactical display, he watched ship after ship disappear. Half his fleet was gone in minutes. The rest were scattered and burning. Retreat, Veloth ordered, his voice hollow. All ships retreat. It was the first time in 500 years that he had given that order. Far away, on the edge of Council space, Hana Kim was fighting her own battle. She had taken a small team to the Synthoid production facility, a massive space station where the Council had built millions of their replacement humans. The station was defended by automated systems, but Hana knew those systems better than anyone. She had helped design some of them. Back when she still worked for the Council, now she was using that knowledge to destroy them. Security is down, one of her team reported. We have access to the main core. Hana moved through the dark corridors of the station, her weapon ready. Around her, Synthoids lay motionless on the floor, killed by Michael's virus. They looked almost peaceful, like they were sleeping. She found the main computer and began uploading a new program. This was not just about shutting down Synthoid production. This was about showing the galaxy what the Council had really done. The program accessed the station's records. It found the files that showed where the Synthoid neural patterns had come from, the names and faces of the humans who had been captured and copied, the secret prisons where they had been held, the experiments that had been done to them. Hana sent the files to every news network in the galaxy. Within an hour, everyone would know the truth. The Council had not just tried to replace humanity. They had tortured and murdered humans to create their replacements. On the Council's central station, Grace Yoon was moving through shadows. She had spent years learning every secret passage, every hidden door, every blind spot in the station's security. Now she was using all of that knowledge for one purpose. 2 of the Council members who had signed the genocide order were meeting in a private chamber. They were trying to find a way to save themselves from the disaster that was unfolding around them. They never heard Grace coming. When she was finished, she stood over their bodies and felt nothing. These creatures had ordered the death of every human in existence. They had signed papers that would have killed children, families, entire worlds. Now they were dead, and Grace did not feel guilty at all. She was about to leave when her communicator buzzed. It was James. Grace, Saris just broadcast the genocide order to every species in the galaxy. The Council's allies are abandoning them. This is almost over. Grace allowed herself a small smile. Good. What do you need me to do? Maltus is trying to escape. Stop him. With pleasure. In the Council chamber, High Overseer Maltus was running for the first time in his long life. Alarms screamed around him. Explosions shook the station. On every screen, he could see the reports of his empire falling apart. And on every screen, he could see human faces, human ships, human soldiers, fighting with a fury that he had never imagined possible. He reached his private shuttle bay and stopped. Grace Yoon was standing in front of his ship, a weapon in her hand. Going somewhere, High Overseer? Maltus straightened his robes and tried to look dignified. This is illegal. The Council has laws. You cannot simply murder a sitting overseer. The Council signed an order to kill 8 billion people, Grace said calmly. Your laws mean nothing to us anymore. She raised her weapon. Wait, Maltus said desperately. I can give you information. Resources. I can help you rebuild. You need me. Grace shook her head slowly. No, we do not. The last thing Maltus saw was the flash of her weapon, and across the galaxy, on 100 burning stations and 1,000 scattered ships, the Council's servants finally understood what they had awakened. Humanity had come for them, and humanity did not forgive. The war lasted 3 weeks. The aftermath lasted a decade. When the fighting stopped, the galaxy was a different place. The Galactic Council, which had ruled for 10,000 years, no longer existed. Its leaders were dead or in chains. Its fleets were scattered. Its synthoid workforce was nothing but empty shells, collecting dust on 1,000 worlds. And humanity, the species that the Council had tried to erase, was still standing. James Park stood in the ruins of the Great Council Hall. The living crystals in the walls had gone dark, and the massive thrones were empty. Dust floated in the air, where 12 alien rulers had once looked down on the galaxy with absolute power. Now they were gone. Ambassador Park. A voice came from behind him. It was Advisor Ceres, the only council member who had survived. She had helped humanity, and in return, humanity had spared her life. Just James now, he said. I am not an ambassador anymore. There is no council to send ambassadors to. Ceres nodded slowly. What happens next? Will your people take our place? Will you become the new rulers of the galaxy? James was quiet for a long moment. He thought about all the things that humanity could do with its newfound power. They could conquer. They could punish. They could make every species in the galaxy bow down before them, the way the Council had made humanity bow. But that was not what humans were. No, James said finally. We will not become what the Council was. We are better than that. He turned to face Ceres. We are going to build something new. A galactic assembly, where every species has a voice, where no one rules over others, where different means interesting, not inferior. Ceres looked at him with something like wonder in her eyes. The Council would never have done such a thing. They believed that order required control, and look where that belief got them, James said. Control is an illusion. The galaxy is too big, too strange, too full of life to be controlled by anyone. The best we can do is work together and hope that tomorrow is better than today. The trials began a month later. The surviving council members and their highest officials were brought before a tribunal made up of representatives from every species they had wronged. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The genocide order, the synthoid experiments, the centuries of exploitation and abuse. 5 council members were convicted of crimes against sentient life. They were sentenced to spend the rest of their lives on a prison planet, isolated from the galaxy they had once ruled. But not everyone received punishment. Commander Veloth stood before the tribunal and waited for his sentence. He had led the council's fleets. He had fought against humanity in the Amber Nebula. He had every reason to expect death. Instead, David Lee stood and spoke on his behalf. Commander Veloth is a soldier, David said. He followed orders, as soldiers do. He did not create the genocide order. He did not approve of it. When he learned the truth, he surrendered his remaining ships without a fight. The tribunal looked at David in surprise. You are asking us to show mercy to our enemy? I am asking you to show wisdom, David said. The galaxy needs experienced leaders. It needs people who understand military strategy and fleet operations. Veloth can be that person, if we give him the chance. The tribunal debated for 3 days. In the end, they followed David's recommendation. Veloth was pardoned and offered a position in the new Galactic Defense Force. He accepted. Years later, Veloth would become one of humanity's strongest allies. He never forgot that David Lee had saved his life when he had every reason not to. And he never stopped trying to understand what made humans so different from every other species he had known. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The fear of extinction faded into memory. Children grew up hearing stories about the war, about the hidden fleet, about the heroes who had saved humanity from destruction. Hana Kim became the most famous engineer in the galaxy. Her Spectre tech was adapted for peaceful purposes, helping ships navigate dangerous regions of space safely. She opened a school for young engineers, teaching them that technology should be used to help people, not control them. Michael Cho finally got the recognition he deserved. His warning about the Council, ignored for 20 years, was now taught in history classes across the galaxy. He wrote a book about his experiences and spent his final years traveling between worlds, studying the biology of different species and looking for the thing that made life special. Grace Yoon disappeared. Nobody knew where she went. Some said she had retired to a quiet planet somewhere, tired of fighting. Others said she was still out there, watching the galaxy, ready to act if humanity ever faced another threat. James Park would smile whenever someone asked him about her. Grace will show up when she is needed, he would say. That is what she does. As for James himself, he served as humanity's representative to the new Galactic Assembly for 15 years. He helped write the laws that would govern the galaxy for generations. He negotiated treaties and settled disputes and slowly, piece by piece, built the peaceful future that he had always dreamed of. And then, one day, he retired. He was old now, his hair white, and his face lined with age. He had seen things that most people could not imagine. He had stood in the ruins of empires and watched new civilizations rise. He had lost friends and made enemies, and learned that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than he had ever believed. On his last day as a public figure, a young alien diplomat came to visit him. She was from a species that had joined the assembly only recently, eager to learn about the humans who had changed everything. Ambassador Park, she said, I have studied human history. Your species has faced so many challenges. Ice ages, plagues, wars, the Council's betrayal. How did you survive when so many others have fallen? James sat on his balcony, looking out at the rebuilt city below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. It was beautiful, and he was grateful to be alive to see it. We were never designed to survive, he said finally. Evolution did not create us to be strong or fast or powerful. It created us to be stubborn. He smiled at the memory of all the humans he had known. The fighters and the dreamers. The scientists and the soldiers. The ordinary people who had done extraordinary things simply because they refused to give up. Other species look at the universe and see limits, he said. They see what is possible and what is not. They accept their place in the order of things. He turned to look at the young diplomat. Humans look at the universe and see challenges. We see walls that need to be climbed. We see problems that need to be solved. We see darkness, and we light fires. The diplomat nodded slowly, understanding. The Council thought they could replace us, James said. They thought our emotions, our chaos, our beautiful stubbornness made us inferior. They never understood that those things were our greatest strength. He looked up at the stars that were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, human ships were exploring new worlds. Human scientists were making new discoveries. Human families were building new lives on planets that the Council had never even known existed. We did not survive because we were meant to, James Park said. We survived because we refused to die. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the galaxy kept turning, full of life and chaos and hope, just the way humans liked it.